Okay, so everything is cumulative. So now that we can determine consumer surplus and producer surplus and total surplus, we need to find out how those are impacted in the real world by the imposition of taxes. And then here's a vocabulary term for you: deadweight loss. You will sound like such an econ nerd if you go around and talk about, well, the deadweight loss, the imposition of the tax on OPS voters after they approve the bond issue. How do you decide how large deadweight loss is? What determines the size of your deadweight loss or the magnitude of it? And how does tax revenue depend upon how big your tax is and how it is applied? Who's excited? Okay, guys, this stuff affects government policy decisions a lot. A lot. And this is the stuff that voters and many elected officials don't actually understand. And if you've been infuriated by the reality of economics versus the way things work in our everyday lives, this chapter is going to drive you batty.
Economics should be a required thing like that.
It should be a required class, yes.
But people, it would ruin it.
Okay. A tax, we've had this definition before, right? It splits the price buyers pay and the price sellers get. It raises the price for buyers. It lowers the price for sellers. And we know from chapter 6 that it takes our quantity to the left and decreases the quantity overall. Now, the thing we know is the burden of the tax can be shifted depending upon whether it's imposed on buyers or sellers. But these facts do not change regardless of which way the tax is imposed. So for this chapter, we don't care whether it's a tax on buyers or a tax on sellers. We're not caring about the burden. It's just the overall influence of the tax that we're looking at. That was a lot of words. I think you need visuals. It's graph time. All right. So our equilibrium without a tax is right here. It's beautiful. It is lovely. It's a very scenic graph. So we impose a tax of $T, and here is where we end up. This is the size of our tax. Okay. You're going to need to be able to replicate a graph like this, so you should be following along in the home version of the game. Did you put a star down so you can come back and watch this again, or?
No, I have it right here, so like.
Oh, got it.
I don't need to write it, see?
Okay. So the price buyers pay is up here. The price sellers pay is down here. Okay, and we have a new quantity. What shall we call it? Quantity T, quantity at taxation. Yay. By the way, I will say you guys did a fantastic job labeling these graphs correctly on the quiz, on the Chapter 6 quiz, the price for buyers, price for sellers, and getting those correct. That's actually pretty critical. What? It's appearing that way.
I'm gonna get the drift after our final.
Okay. So, who wants to guess, who amongst those who hasn't printed out the lecture notes, who wants to guess where the tax revenue is illustrated on the graph?
In the box.
There is no shaded area. It's in the rectangle. It's in the rectangle between buyers and sellers. Okay? So, that's an equation here for you. The amount of the tax times the quantity sold at that tax is how you determine the revenue. So there you can actually find a dollar amount if you're given dollars.
Have you started our quizzes?
The chapter 8 quizzes? 7 quizzes? No. I'm trying to finish 6 first.
Oh yeah, I forgot we didn't even get those back.
But unfortunately, I spent time last night taking care of Hoke. I was working on grad school.
Okay, well when you're not stressed out, you don't get angry. So.
I've got midterms working on, so. Okay.
Are you excited for spring break?
Spring break. Welfare economics. Okay. Gains and losses from tax. There are gains from taxation, yes. Okay. We got to look at consumer surplus and producer surplus and total surplus, tax revenue. And we got to look at all of these things with the tax and then without the tax. This is becoming an extremely long word problem kind of situation. Yes?
No.
Yes. Because you have to look at it, you have to look at surplus before and after the tax in order to tell the impact of the tax, right? Common sense. Okay, so what do we do with tax revenue? We fund things. We build roads. We improve the building you're sitting in. We pay the staff for the building you're sitting in. We provide fire and police services. We do things like control air traffic.
We build the farmers marketplace.
Yeah, we build the First Street Plaza downtown Papillion. We put planters along Parkview Boulevard as part of flood abatement. We defend our nation. We go attack ISIS. Okay, all of these things are funded with taxation.
Yet we're still trillions of dollars in debt.
Well, that's because we don't tax enough. And that we'll talk about in Chapter 9. Those are externalities.
That's none of my business.
Okay. So tax revenue is included in total surplus. Tax revenue is included in total surplus.
You should probably highlight that.
Tax revenue is included in total surplus. If it were a hint, I would have winked.
Now we're all waiting for her to.
Don't wink at me, Michael. That's creepy. Okay, so back to our graph. But what fun is a graph and the geometry that accompanies it if we don't have an unnecessary number of letters?
Yeah, do you want to host quizzes?
Yay. Who wants a big bowl of alphabet soup right about now? Okay, without a tax, consumer surplus is here in the yellow, A plus B plus C. You got that? No problem, right? Okay. Producer surplus will be D plus F plus E or D, E, F. Yes. Okay. Tax revenue, well, wait. Tax revenue here is
There's no tax.
so tax revenue is 0 because there is no tax, suckers. Okay. So total surplus is A, B, C, D, E, F. Yes, that is total surplus. It's the whole thing. Woo! You knew that. You knew that. Don't second guess yourself. Are you singing to yourself? So that's the econ song? Okay.
I tweeted about econ, and this econ teacher favorited it. It was weird. Oh yeah, that happened to me too.
What?
Yeah.
You tweeted about econ
And I
and
wanted to quit. And the guy favorited it.
okay. All right.
It was weird.
With the tax, where is the tax? How do we know where the tax is?
D&D.
Because we go to the quantity of taxation, and the price for sellers and price for buyers. Okay, so What is consumer surplus with the tax?
AC plus B. Let's just get math.
Consumer surplus with the tax is just A. It's just A. It's above their price to the left of the curve. Above their price to the left of the curve. It's just been a chapter. Emmerich, something is fascinating down there.
Ew.
I know. That's the way I feel when students sit in class and stare at their crotch all hour. Producer surplus is? F. Okay. Tax revenue is? Finally, you get to say that. Now, what is total surplus? ABDF. We lose everything to the right of the tax. So, the tax reduces surplus by C plus E. So this is what our tax costs us. Because the taxation revenue is getting used, it's a benefit to society. Okay. This is your deadweight loss. Deadweight loss, guys. Deadweight, one word. Deadweight. Don't hyphenate it. Don't spread it out into two words. It's not capitalized. It's just deadweight loss.
Compound word.
It is a compound word, yes. Deadweight loss. It has a nifty abbreviation. You'll want to know it because you'll get tired of writing out deadweight loss. DWL. DWL. Okay. Deadweight loss is what you lose out of total surplus as a result of taxation. Because remember, total surplus before the tax was everything, right? A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F. Now we've lost C and E, so this is our deadweight loss. Okay? Clear enough? Simple enough? No heart attacks yet? Uh-oh. That's a four-letter word in here. You don't go saying easy. All right. Because of the tax, we lose the sale of this quantity of this good. Okay? We lose them. They aren't being sold. Okay? Buyers would like to have them, but it's not worth it for producers to produce them because of the tax. So the tax is interfering in the market, right? It's keeping us from getting to equilibrium. It is preventing mutually beneficial trades. In this region, between QT and QE, the sellers would like to produce and sell, and the buyers would like to consume. But the tax separates them. It's inserting that wedge. What are you smirking about, Kyle?
Adam, you're a quantity tax. Oh, thanks, Kyle.
Oh. Oh. Yes. Wow. Okay, then.
I think he had Irish coffee too.
Chuck. In the real world, is reaching equilibrium possible? That's a darn good question, Chuck. The answer Did you just say thanks, Obama?
Is it not with Obama?
The answer, Chuck, I believe is probably yes. It is possible, but it is improbable.
Did you just come up with that on your own?
Yes.
It's plausible. Yeah, it's plausible.
They made it up.
I don't want this.
Barbosa says impossible.
Sheets anything.
Okay. Are we good here? Practice time! Okay. Compute consumer surplus, producer surplus, and total surplus without a tax. Then if there's a $100 tax per ticket, compute the consumer surplus, producer surplus, tax revenue, total surplus, and deadweight loss. So let's hook up the smart board. You don't have what? These are incredibly low airfares, by the way. All right, where is consumer surplus? Consumer surplus is... So consumer surplus is 200
Wow, you need to calibrate your board.
times 100, which is 1/2. Okay, fine.
Wait, where does it say it's $200?
It's a game where you always win.
You know you wanted to do it. You just.
You always win this game?
Yeah, you always win. You never lose.
I mean, you could lose if you're Baron.
It makes you feel good about yourself.
Baron loses this game all the time. Are you kidding me?
But it's fair.
True. Baron also probably makes it.
Baron makes the top. Yeah, Baron makes.
Baron is not Breaking Bad.
You don't know that. Don't tell me that if he told you what he made meant, you probably would question it a little bit.
He could be brave. I feel
Okay. So let's try this again. Consumer surplus. So 200 tall times 1/2 is 100 times 100 in quantity. So our consumer surplus, 1,000. Okay. Producer surplus. It is a little laggy. It's my computer. Is also
the same.
1,000. So total surplus. Yes, because zeros.
It's zeros. Yeah.
It's because they're unity left. Yeah, it's
Because zeros. All right.
unity left.
Good?
Yeah, we do.
10,000, 10,000, 20,000. Did someone ask a question?
I definitely thought it was 1,000. So
Okay.
It'll go.
All right, so now $100 tax per ticket. Go down the curve to where? So I start at the equilibrium, go down $100.
That's where the new curve is, right? Isn't that how you do it?
There you go.
Draw a new demand curve, so like this.
Since when do we draw a new demand curve? What the heck? Were you?
Is that right?
Okay, and so then our tax incidence is now here. Okay, and then we'll,
Why couldn't you just go over and because it's 100 on the side, 150 to 250?
you could, yes, you definitely could. Okay, so this is now quantity at taxation, right here, 75. Okay, so where is consumer surplus?
It is 250 to 400. Yeah.
So half of 150 is times,
Anybody has 75 squared? 75. Yeah, you know.
those of you who have your squares memorized, 75 squared.
Kyle.
Perfect square.
Or watch this. There's a calculator right here. Oh, but there's no calculators on that.
Yeah, but we need to get through this. So 75 squared is
5,625.
okay. Anybody make any predictions about producer surplus? Producer surplus is where? From the quantity taxation over and so total surplus good job. Yes, Alex. Okay. So we know the tax is $100, right? The easiest way to do it is to come over from equilibrium and spread them $100. So here's 150 and there's 250, right? But that only works because our curves are unit elastic. So if you didn't have unit elastic curves, what you have to do is go from the equilibrium price down the amount of the tax and then draw another curve parallel to your existing curve. And then where that intersects is where your tax hits, and there's your tax incidence. Okay? Go back and watch, I think, the very first day of the Chapter 6 lecture, and that covers that one. Okay, so what is our consumer surplus and our producer surplus were both 56.25. Okay, here is our tax, which is
7,500.
okay.
18,000.
So 18,750.
Okay.
And without the tax, we don't even have to do that math. We can just do this, can't we? Figure out our deadweight loss. Except it's 1250. So that is our deadweight loss. That's our total surplus.
So that blue square is a tax. Her head is a deadweight loss. Or would you just subtract?
I would just subtract rather than deal with the math.
Wait, what are you subtracting?
Remember our total surplus without the tax was 20,000. So I subtracted our new total surplus from
Oh, okay. Like
the
previous.
yeah. No, Swift was swift with her calculator. Okay? So we'll step through it here and see if we're right. 10,000, 10,000, yay, we win. 20,000, so we were right all through this. 250 and 150, so we were right there. 56.25, 56.25. Tax revenue was 7,500. We're right on track here so far. Total surplus 18,750. Deadweight loss 1250. Everybody follow that? It's basic math. It makes sense. Say again. What was our total surplus without the tax? So subtract the new total surplus. Okay? Lovely? Okay, let's make it not lovely.
Why?
How do we decide how big the deadweight loss is?
There's only 10 minutes left. There's not time for
No, stop being negative. All right. What goods or services should the government tax to raise the revenue they need? How does the government decide?
Goods that are like not really good versus like I'm thinking like cigarettes.
Okay. Government does often decide to tax bads.
Yeah.
They're economically they're called bads. alcohol, tobacco. In the places where marijuana is legalized, it's a bad, and so it is highly taxed. That is one thing.
Did you say like elastic goods?
Goods where demand is more price elastic. Yeah, yeah.
So like
Yeah.
a room full of like economics and like really highly paid people are like, well, alcohol's bad. Alcohol's bad, so that's gonna get taxed. Or like,
Those are bads.
that's a bad. It's definitely a bad. So they're dropping. They say that.
Textbooks are bad.
Economic goods that have a detrimental impact on the welfare of society economically are known as bads.
So econ
Is
textbooks.
McDonald's a bad?
The
Like fast food, is that bad?
fast food is taxed,
Anything that's taxed is bad?
not necessarily.
I get it. 'Cause, like, that's
Your house
what
is
it
taxed,
is,
isn't it?
Everything is taxed.
You pay taxes.
Almost everything is taxed.
Except for you, so.
Food is
So-
taxed like in the store.
Just because it's taxed doesn't mean you can surmise from the fact that it's taxed why it's taxed.
Well, no, isn't like food at a grocery store? That's not taxed, is it?
Unprepared food is not taxed. No.
So what do you mean, like fruits and vegetables? Like if you go to a grocery store and you buy
Fruits, vegetables, boxed goods, loaf of bread. If you go to the deli and buy deli chicken and pre-made mashed potatoes, that's taxed.
So at what point does the paper that wraps the tobacco, like it's sold to the tobacco company as a good, and then it's wrapped in a bag? You make it good.
Are you being deliberately?
I just like the irony, like.
Yeah. Okay. One possible answer, guys, in deciding what to tax. One possible answer is we should tax the things with the smallest deadweight loss, so we have the smallest impact on total surplus.
How do you decrease your deadweight loss?
Just we've done this enough times. You should know I present you the rules and then I prove it. Right?
Kyle. He's
The questions are good. The questions are good, but just
Stop talking.
Okay. So the question then becomes not how do you decrease the size of the deadweight loss, but what is a small deadweight loss? What is a large deadweight loss? Depends on elasticity. Oh, you knew elasticity was coming back to haunt you sooner or later, didn't you? Oh, you had to have known. The more inelastic they are, the smaller the deadweight loss.
Insulin. We need a tax insulin.
Okay.
Yeah, it's your fault.
Price elasticity of demand or price elasticity of supply is the measure of how much the quantity demanded or quantity supplied changes when price changes. Did I say that right? Yes. Yes. Okay. It's a tall, if they're inelastic, it's going to be a tall rectangle, but a narrow one. If they're elastic, it's going to be a long rectangle, but and it's how their elasticities relate to one another.
I take back my easy comment. I take it back.
No, it was easy up to that point. We're just making it hard now. Sure.
Okay, so like food that you buy that's not prepared, wouldn't you say that's more inelastic?
Food that you buy that's not prepared. Well, food is a broad category, right? So there's not a lot of substitutes for food. So yes, I'm going to say demand for food is pretty inelastic.
Or even
Like
like
insulin.
tomatoes,
Yeah.
let's say tomatoes.
Okay. Well, are there other things I can substitute for tomatoes? I guess it depends on what I'm trying to make. If I'm trying to make salsa, my demand for tomatoes is pretty inelastic. If I'm trying to make ketchup, my demand for tomatoes is pretty inelastic. If I'm trying to make spaghetti sauce or tomato soup, my demand for tomatoes is pretty inelastic. If I'm trying to prepare a breakfast buffet, my demand for tomatoes is fairly elastic. Food is pretty inelastic. When you get into the individual categories of food, then your demand becomes more elastic. So if you say cereal, well, I don't have to have cereal, I'll have bacon and eggs instead.
That sounds a lot better.
We're going back to those determinants of elasticity. All right, come on, guys. Hang with me. Hang with me. We don't have the luxury of throwing away minutes in here. All right. So when supply is inelastic, can you see how funny looking this dead weight curve or dead weight loss triangle is going to be? Okay. It's hard for the market, for the firms to leave the market when the tax reduces their price. Okay. They're kind of stuck in the market. I own this land and I have my apple trees planted and my family's been operating this orchard, and just because the government is now taxing apples, I'm not just going to plow under my orchard and get out of the apple growing business. Right? It's not a perfectly competitive market because, gee, I'd like to grow, I'd like to be in the apple growing business. So I go and I buy a whole bunch of land and I plant a bunch of trees, and then I have to sit and wait a bunch of years, don't I? So entry in and out of that market is not relatively easy, correct? I'd like to be a neurosurgeon. Not a perfectly competitive market there, is it? I'd like to mow lawns. Now there's a perfectly competitive market. I have hands, feet, and a mower. I'm qualified. All right. So the tax is only going to reduce quantity a little bit, and the dead weight loss is tiny, is small, is small. Herndon, do you need to stand up? You have been sleeping all hour. All right. So let's make supply more elastic. Let's do lawn mowing maybe, okay? So now the government is taxing me on my lawn mowing services. That shifted the quantity quite a bit, yes. And so the dead weight loss is significantly larger. Okay. So the more inelastic, the smaller the dead weight loss. The more elastic, the greater the dead weight loss. And trade always
makes everyone better off.
Makes everyone better off. All right. We will start with elasticity of demand tomorrow. No, you already know the determinants.